everybody. Preston Flat back again with my former missionary companion, and from the world headquarters, from the catacombs, and indeed from deep within the bowels of Preston Flat, we bring you today's message. So man, did you ever see a river that is just boiling fast? I don't mean hot, but I mean it's just like zipping down the canyon. And yet you'll see that there are fishermen that will stand along the edge of it, throw in a little fishing attractant, lure or fly or something, and it'll drift down and there will be a fish that will grab it. And indeed, if you can look underwater at that place, you can find that the fish have found a place in the turbulence of the river where they can hang out between the turbulence of the right, between the turbulence of the left, between the turbulence of too high or too low, between the turbulence of too much to the front and too much to the back. And they can just stay there and surf that place of ease in the midst of a changing world, in the midst of the laboredness, or in Buddhist terms, of the suffering of the world. They found a place of refuge, is what I'm trying to say. And that's pretty dang amazing. And similarly, you may have seen where, so that represents the place between too far to the right, too far to the left, too high, too low, too much to the front, too much to the back. But not only is it possible to stay comfortably and at ease in a place of refuge like that, but if you actually look at the river and you look along the edges, sometimes you'll see an eddy current. It looks like a little whirlpool up near the shore that can either stay where it is or even move upstream against the direction of the river flow, the main river flow. And that is wild. And so I'm going to talk about the currents of life and how you can do something similar in this world of how to find refuge and a place of ease in the midst of the laboredness, the midst of the challenges and the struggles of life. Can you find a place to put your mind that is just exactly right, that is a place of ease? And having found that, to rest there and go no more out, as it says in the Bible. So you have that example. You also have, like, sometimes they'll have a river flowing down. There'll be like a dam, and the water flows over the dam, and you'd think that if something went over the dam, it would just keep going downstream. But no, sometimes it gets caught in that circular current, and it just stays there. It just stays in that place. That represents like a vertical example of this same thing. So I want you to imagine that fish. What would happen if instead of surfing that sweet spot, the fish can feel, that's what I'm trying to tell you. It can feel when it starts to go this way, there's too much on this side, and then that's how it knows to come back. That's the wisdom of the Buddha, my friends. It can feel if it's too much this side, too much laboredness, and it can just stay in and surf this place of ease. And so similarly, people can do the same flippin' thing. So one example are surfers, where they actually will put a foot on one side of a surfboard, one on the other, and then they sink their center of gravity between the two. And then though the waves in the ocean will move and change in all kinds of ways that have never ever occurred before to them in that place, they can still through it all find a place of balance and of refuge in the middle of it. In fact, you look at some surfer that's really good, it looks kind of effortless when they do that, right? So how can we do that? Well, what we need to do is find a place between opposites. Like as you sit there, check this out. The world is parading up before you in new ways that have never ever occurred before from the beginning of time. Some presentations are a piece of cake. It's like, oh, no big deal. This is great, you know. But then other ones, you'll feel laboredness, like I want to move away from that. That's called aversion. But is there a way to still surf the sweet spot? Or there's attraction or affinity where you like something and you want to move toward it. But see, what people don't realize is when they lose this sweet spot between the presentations of life, between right and left, they then go outward, and then there's a really good chance that they'll get caught up in life itself, and so they get spun out, and then they suffer in life. So the fish was able to find a place of refuge in which it didn't suffer. It just moved wherever it needed to move, and it was self-evident where that place was, because the river itself was instructive. It would give it a little more pressure on the side, and it would say, move that way a little, and then the fish would move like that. And then it would say, it would push on this side, and then the fish would know. It would just feel evenness as it surfed its place in the river. Same if there was laboredness on top, it would know to move down a little, or underneath it would know to move up. But it could easily know where that place was, because the river itself is instructive. Or I should say, the place of ease, as soon as the fish departed outward from it in the tiniest little bit, it would know it. It would know with absolute certainty. So, I like to say in Buddhism, but at least in Christianity, perhaps not your brand, but there's this idea that where two or more are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. So there you are, and this works whether it's 2 or more people, 2 or 3 people, or 2 or more points. So this is what you do. You want to surf life without a surfboard? You want to set up something equivalent to what the fish has, where it knows exactly where to be, when, and how to always be in the sweet spot? This is what you do. You sample 2 or more points. From where you are, you choose one on this side and one on this side. These points represent the teachings of the waves that the fish feels on both sides. So, to begin with, let's choose the sitting bones. There's a sitting bone on the left, on one side, a sitting bone on the other, and then we just rest between them. What will happen is the world will present itself in ever new ways. Yes, it's impermanent, but it's also always new. So and the newness is birth. It's always generating and presenting in new ways. And when those ways, with the dissolution of those, when those pass to something else, when they change and they're no more as they were, that's death. And you can surf the place between birth and death by starting out surfing this middle place. And then the world will present itself to you. There's a tendency, as these sense impressions arrive, new sights, sounds, feelings, hearing, tastes, everything, through it all there's a tendency to move toward what you want. In other words, to leave this place of refuge and go out into the world, and to have a wave hit you sideways and get carried way down the stream into the world. Or, so going toward what you want or moving away from what you don't want. That's called attraction or affinity, which means liking and wanting to move toward. Or or aversion, like you want to move away from it, right? But what is there between attraction and aversion? There's a place of refuge right in the middle. How are you going to find that? Because you're sitting there right now, right? Are you standing on a surfboard now? No. Suppose you're sitting. Well, this is what you do. You gather 2 or more points and know what is in the midst of them. There's a sitting bone on this side, for example. This is just one way to do it. A sitting bone on this side where you meet the chair, and a sitting bone on this side. And you can simply feel them both evenly and abide in the straight and narrow way that can be found in this example between right and left, or between any of the opposites of life. And as you sit there, I'm trying to say that sometimes it'll be obvious what makes you lean. You'll see someone come by with a piece of cake or an ice cream cone, and you go, "Gimme!" And you'll depart from this place and lunge out into the world. And then you'll end up fighting for the piece of cake and suffering and everything. But can you see that wasn't a place of steadiness? You had steadiness before the cake arrived. Or someone brings something else that you don't like and you want to move away from it, like, dang, those vegetables are here, I'm moving away from it. But still, you're going out into the world to avoid that thing. Well, this is a technique that you can actually find the place of the trout, find the place of the fish, by feeling the sitting bone on this side and the sitting bone on this side evenly. And then the very instant that you start to lean, just like the very instant that the trout started to depart outward into the laboredness of that river, it knew exactly what direction to come back, and it knew with certainty the very moment that it arrived there. That is the wisdom of the Buddha. And you can use this technique. So I wanted to say sometimes it's obvious, like what would make you lean, but other times it's not. And the cool thing about this is a way to take no thought for the morrow. You don't have to know what any of it is, because it's not just one or two things presenting itself at a time. Instead, the whole world, all the sense impressions parade up before you. It's almost like there's an example in Buddhism where they say it's like there's the reception hall and there's only one chair in that hall, and you're the one that sits there, and everything else, it will appear with its, it will parade up, but there's only room, there's only one chair, and that means that those things will arrive and then they will depart. But you learn how to surf and how to hold to this middle way. And so you simply don't lean. And what I was saying is you don't have to know what anything is, because accumulatively, all of life, all the sense impressions that arrive in ways that have never happened before, they all in total come to this place, and they invite a lean. It's like they'll give you one combination of presentations, and then the question is, this place they call in mysticism, they call this me, because this is the place of the heart. This is many traditions have the idea of giving your heart in devotion to to God, or like that. So when you hear me in scriptures, a lot of times this is what they're meaning, the place of the heart. So with all these new combinations, they show up, and they continually ask this question of you as you sit there and surf this place. The question that is continually asked is this: lovest thou me more than these? Lovest thou me more than these? And this is what devotion is. When you abide in this place between opposites, can you see that that's devotion compared to if you abide here for a while and then you just skip out and you do something else? Can you see that you weren't devoted to this middle way? So I'm just trying to say that if you set up this scale, it's the equivalent of an old-fashioned scale, or you could say it's the yoke of Christianity, then all you do is just surf. It's a no-brainer. The surfer has their place on the wave, and they know exactly what to do. The wave instructs them. Or the place of balance, the sweet spot instructs them. They start to lose balance one way, they simply bring it back. It's simple as can be. Or they start to lose balance another way, they simply bring it back. So this is the importance of wisdom, or the wisdom of the Buddha. And so a lot of times in meditation, people just sit in tranquility, in peacefulness. They take whatever they've had thus far in their life and they just sit there and they meditate. They experience samadhi or tranquility. But then what happens is after they get done meditating, then it only lasts a short time. That's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is they haven't spent time in the river. You need the sides. You need the right and the left so that you can find the place between right and left. You need the up and the down so you can find the place between too high and too low. That's the instruction, to find the place of steadiness. And if a fish all their life, if they're just in a stagnant pond, there might be enough oxygen in the pond, but they're just floating around, no instruction of the currents. At least it doesn't seem to them they are. They could just sit there, they could swim around, and then they think, well, I'm just going to meditate. So they just, from where they are, they just go, blah, and they meditate. But then some big thing happens, some stirring of the water, and they don't know what to do. They might turn sideways to the wave and get washed way sideways, way down the water source. And that's being caught up in the world too. Instead, you want to be the trout, you want to be the fish that when you feel more on one side or more on the other, you're instructed, you know what to do. You know how to find a place between opposites, between right and left, this place, between too high and too low, this place. All right? And that's a place that doesn't miss the mark, because when you're there, you don't need to change. What I'm saying is, can you see that if you're already exactly in the sweet spot as to all of life, it wouldn't necessarily make sense to go out from there. Why would you want to turn sideways and have the wave wash you down the thing? So you have this kind of wisdom, and you can practice it. You can actually surf without a surfboard, as I like to call it, by gathering from the place where you are. Gather a point on one side, a point on the other. Use the physical body, the frame of the physical body, to experience not leaning. To learn how to trust this place with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. To learn, just like the person that plows a field and turns back is not fit for the kingdom of God. Well, my friend, that's the fish that's all surfing the sweet spot, and then it turns this way and gets washed down the river out into the world. But this sweet spot is good, and you can follow it. Once you learn this lesson, you can find the sweet spot in the breath too. And you can find a place to set your mind. For example, in breathing, you've probably experienced what laboredness of breathing is, right? You're trying to catch your breath in one way or another. You'll feel that if you... Okay, and so when you observe the breath, assuming you're not winded, right? You're just sitting there breathing. Well, between the inhalation and exhalation, there's a sweet spot. There's a place that you can put your mind. And no matter how the breath moves, you learn the lesson this way. You can actually turn this sideways and apply it to observe the sweet spot in the breath, the place that is a place of refuge. Just like the place of the fish, the place of the trout in your breathing. You'll sense that if you breathe too much one way, that forcing the breath that way enters into laboredness in that direction. Forcing the breath too much that way also enters into laboredness, but you will sense that if you instead you go back up, you can find the sweet spot. That's what you want. That's the place of refuge. And so that's the example for up and down. You can do it for right and left, front and back, any of the opposites. And you can put your mind there and observe the breath and keep your mind on the place of refuge in the midst of a changing world. So what's the importance of this? Well, there's an example given in the Buddhist writings that it's like you have grass, right? Grass growing up, and you can put a rock on the grass, right? And the grass underneath will kind of shrivel down and it won't thrive very much. That represents when you're just meditating without the wisdom of the Buddha necessarily. Because when you take the rock off, the grass grows back again. And that's the example of people that struggle with addictions, with, sila. You know, the sila is the moral code of Buddhism, or just whatever triggers a person to depart from this place, to go out into the world. They do that because they don't really have this wisdom of the Buddha. They're not used to following the instruction of the stream and staying in the sweet spot no matter what. But on the other hand, there's an example given that if you have the wisdom of the Buddha, that's when the grass doesn't grow back, because you have that sweet spot and you abide in it and you keep in that place no matter what the world will present. Well, how would you do that? You start where you are. You use the aid, the tool of the frame of the physical body to gather a point on one side, one on the other, and then simply don't lean. It's just as simple as can be. And then you stay in the sweet spot like those. And once you learn it for left and right, you can turn it, you can apply it in other ways too. So when someone is, for example, addicted to something and they do good for a while, they can... When they do good, what they're doing is they're holding to this, and then somehow in the world there will be a combination, a tricky combination of appearances or presentations that, okay, I haven't seen that exact one before. I'm going to depart from here and go out into it, and lose this place, and the grass will grow back again, you know. But what do you do? How do you train to not do that? You train by surfing without a surfboard, by being the trout of the world, by being a fish right in the sweet spot. Why? Because you're sitting here. Like for me, suppose there's a beautiful woman that normally would attract me outwardly, right? I'm sitting here, and first an ugly woman walks past. So I learn how not to lean when a woman comes by. Then an ugly woman in a beautiful, sweet, sweet looking dress walks by. I learn that with the addition of the dress, I still don't lean. Then an ugly woman with a beautiful dress and perfume walks by, wonderful perfume. And I learned that when the ugly woman walks by with the dress and the perfume, I still don't lean. And then an average woman walks by with just the pretty dress, and that I already trained. I already know that that dress doesn't draw me. And even if she has perfume, the perfume doesn't draw me. And so eventually you'll be like the rock on the grass. How are you like the rock on the grass? Because if you're not like the rock on the grass, that means you leaned and you went out into the world. So this is how to do it. This is a method that I like to do. So you have sila, the moral code, which when you start to go outward in those kind of ways, if you're the trout of the river, you'll feel the water more on one side than the other, and then you'll know to bring it back. Samadhi, concentration of the mind. Instead of the mind going out, you bring it back. And how do you know where to bring it back to? Well, it's because of the wisdom of the Buddha. It's because this place literally teaches you at the first departure which way to move back, and gives you absolute certainty that at least in this place and time, in this set of circumstances, you're spot on and you're exactly in the right place. To make it easy, use the frame of the human body in this way. And so, surprisingly, just sitting in tranquility, just in samadhi and like that, it's not as valued as having the wisdom of the Buddha. You really need things in this world to present themselves so that, in the same way that the river would present itself to the fish, so that you can learn the lesson of where to be and how to be, no matter, just always. And once you learn that, then you can still, sit around in samadhi and be all tranquil and stuff. But I mean, you don't want to just sit there and zone out without acquiring this kind of lesson that can be taught from surfing the place of refuge in the midst of a changing world. And please like and subscribe. Oh, and check out, if you're near Provo, Utah, check out the Awakening Valley Sangha. It's at the Yoga Underground on Sundays, and they have two of them. One of them is at 1:30, and then the other one is at 3:30. And it's the Plum Village tradition. I think you'll like it. All right. And get some of my merch, man. Walk around wearing something dumb like this. Wait a minute. I got to show you. Can you see how flippin' ignorant this looks? If you want to help support my feeble efforts on being civilized, then maybe consider buying up some merch and wearing this ignorant shirt around town just to see what people will do. All right, thank you.